Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus, and we are back again today with Paulo Aguilar for the second half of our conversation. Let's jump back into the discussion where we're talking about complex financial structures and some of the available tax savings. So I look at all of these things and I can see if somebody's listening and they're a passive investor, they're kind of new to this, as it starts to become overwhelming. And so as somebody sees some of these things or they're, 6 months from now, whatever, they see a structure that they've never heard of, it doesn't make sense. These are typical things that if you ask your neighborhood accountant, they're not going to know about it. What's a good resource when people see these things like, well, this looks like a great deal, but I have no idea that they've got a DST and a TIC and a QOZ fund all mixed together and maybe you can't do that, but what's a good resource who do people turn to say, hey, what is this? Is it real? Is it a good structure, to kind of get over that hurdle?
That's part of the reason why we, to kind of self-promote here, it's part of the reason why, I created Wealthstone Group. We founded Wealthstone Group with my partner. We want to be that resource where we can help provide guidance on these different structures and figure out what the best course of action is. And so we created the guidebook on 1031 exchanges and alternative investments. So I could definitely give it to you on the podcast or on the description. I have a link to that, right? And people can download that. That's, I think, a great resource that we created. And that only just scratches the surface, because, truly there are advisors that are out there, financial advisors out there that are more generic, but in the sense where they only touch stocks and bonds through financial planning. But advisors like myself are very specialized in this segment of the market and industry. And so, coming from my background, so knowing an advisor that really knows how to navigate through these is also going to help, not only with the resources that are available, because there could be some traps here and there that, certain publications may not point out. And so it's always good to have an advisor when going through this type of transaction or investment, given there might be some traps here and there.
So is that available at your website, the wealthstonegroup.com?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So they go there, they should be able to find it. And
that's right.
We'll have that in the show notes, your website there. So awesome. That's great. Because that's sometimes, the holdup. You hear about something on a podcast, you're driving to work and you're like, what is this thing? And who do I talk to? And then you call your accountant and they have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that was always one of my frustrations through most of my adult life was, as you learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And then as you start to realize that most of your generic, and I don't mean that in a negative way, financial planners and accountants don't really do all this stuff, and nothing against them, because you can't specialize. It's like being a doctor. You can't be a ankle specialist and a brain specialist at the same time. So you have people who have their niches that they're highly specialized in, and then the people who just prepare taxes, and that's kind of all they do. So
that's a great analogy. Yeah, I would echo that. Yeah, because you can't be an expert or a specialist to all, and so it's not as frequently discussed in the investment financial world, but it is 100% true too. There's so many things that you can touch up on, codes, strategies, you name it. It's very difficult to tackle. And so, my specialty, as I mentioned, is on the real estate alternative investment side and tax mitigation side.
Awesome. So let's just dig in a little bit into your focus in real estate. So you're mainly doing redevelopment now. And is this when I see redevelopment, because this is something I love, is when, where there are older buildings that are no longer meeting the need of what we used to do, and somebody comes in and turns it into meeting the need of today. We're recording this today from Salt Lake City, and North Salt Lake is one of these places that 10 years ago was either industrial or really bad neighborhoods, and now you see industrial buildings getting gutted and turned into apartment buildings and new apartments being built next door. And so is that kind of what kind of redevelopment are you guys doing?
Yeah. So I'm personally, I'm going as an LP in some of these redevelopments that I like. Again, from the story of I knew that that's not what I wanted to be actively managing, right? And so one of the deals that I really liked and I put some money in is a redevelopment of a self-storage facility. And so what they ended up doing here is pretty, which is local in New Jersey, was they took an old Sports Authority building and they repurposed and redeveloped it into a self-storage facility. So that is one project that I had invested in. I'm also looking at potentially some office conversions that I think could be very profitable too, depending on where it is in the market, right? Whether it's here in the Northeast or Midwest. So I think that's another area where you kind of hear it everywhere in the news where how office is just getting whacked. And there's really no solution to figuring out how to get people to downtown areas, right? The central business district in some of these cities, where I think that's where a good opportunity is. So finding sponsors that have the know-how and understanding of how to repurpose those types of buildings, work with the government, local government that is, and execute on their strategy is, I think, going to be very, very valuable in today's market.
So what are some of the things you look for? And because the redeveloping office and repurposing office into residential is a big political topic, and we'll probably hear a ton about it coming into the election. What is it that you look for in sponsors? What are the, I guess, the key thing? Because so many of these, I talked to some construction people and they're like, you can't do that. It costs too much. But some people are doing it successfully. So just a little bit more, I mean, about how you evaluate those deals and what looks like it can work and what won't.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to, I think, the complexity of the deal and how the sponsor is positioned in the market, and also what their track record has been executing those types of strategies, right? So if it's a redevelopment, how many times have you actually done this redevelopment deal, right? Whether it's an office to condo or apartment or an industrial to self-storage, what have you, right? I think understanding their track record and how they do it is very crucial. If they don't have a track record, just walk me through the plans, right? And where is this going to go wrong? Because I mean, ultimately, everything is great on a marketing deck, right? But you really want to mitigate the risk. And that's where you really want to focus on when does this go bad? And if it does, what are your contingency plans? And so I think finding out how contingency plans work for them to execute their business plan is very, very crucial and important, and how something I would really focus on.
I guess that's if they don't have a big track record, because there hasn't been a bunch of it done. I guess if I was investing with somebody and they're giving it a try the first time on that 1,000 square foot office building versus a 100-story office tower, like let's give it a try at the 10,000 and see how you do with that.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to, move on up. It's not, I don't know if you can take on a whale on the first bite, but I think a little bit of, because again, it comes back to the complexity of the transaction, right? Of the deal itself. If you got a small deal, call it $5,000-$10,000 redevelopment or whatever, right? Then it's a little bit more simple in the sense versus a 250,000 square foot redevelopment. That gets a little bit more hairy.
And redevelopment is kind of a bigger league term for it's almost like flipping houses. I mean, basically it's a remodel. And you're not just doing the remodel, you're remodeling to a different use. And any remodel, if anybody's ever done one, you realize that the worst part is once you get inside that you often find stuff that you couldn't have known about otherwise.
Oh yeah.
And maybe that's what's better about redevelopment on a larger scale. It's one thing if you go in and you gut a building versus just fixing it up. There's, you're going to put in all new plumbing or all new electrical or however, if you're stripping it completely versus kind of just do a partial and then finding out you need new plumbing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit more. This is one of my favorite questions. What's your superpower? What is it that really drives you above other people?
Yeah. I would say for me, it really comes down to prayer, meditation, and self development. I think I'm very, very big on that, on those three parts, right? Prayer and meditation kind of go hand in hand in a sense, and I really, it's a tough business, right? And we're all entrepreneurs effectively, and so every day we have to face the challenges and have to be able to find a way through. And my piece is that I can find peace and strength through prayer and meditation, and so I do that every day, multiple times a day. And then I couple that, I always want to, I'm just naturally a curious person, and I always want to understand what's going on and how to get better. And so I'm always reading. That's all I do basically. And so a couple of years ago I did, I think I always wanted to try reading 52 books in a year. I did it. I did 54. I'll
Nice.
tell you this much. It was more of it's I found that reading 52, 54 books, right, is more of a vanity, just flex, if you will. In the following year, last year, I actually just said, you know what, I'm going to take the 10 books that I really liked, and I'm going to just focus on those and reread them over and over and over again and just go deeper into that. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
That's pretty awesome. I think it's something we forget about. I had this conversation with my 19-year-old daughter yesterday that, as doctors, we always have continuing education, and so it's a term because the world changes. But I think in a lot of other things in life, we forget that the world continues to change, and even beyond that, just new realms. And there's all this great information out there in different books. And sometimes I find that the book that clicks with me, I may have read that same thing in one, two, three, four, five books. And there was one recently, I forget what it was, that I picked something up out of it, and I was like, that's so it was time block using time blocks, because coming out of being a doctor where I go to work and I just have this schedule. And now what I'm doing in real estate, I have to really manage my schedule more so than I've had to in decades. And talking about this time blocking idea of doing similar things and doing the same things on different, so that everything's planned out so your brain doesn't have to. And I was like, oh, that's so incredible. And then I see somebody else, a friend of mine, post the same thing, and they're like, I've been working on this since I read this book, but it was a book I had read like 3 years ago, and I missed it all in that book. So I had to see it a few times. And I think that's one of the great things about when you're consuming a lot of books is sometimes you miss stuff, and it gives you a chance to catch it the next time. Or like you said, you're like, oh, this was a good book. It connects with me the way it's written. I'm going to go back and read it again and try and pick up those things that I missed.
Yeah, yeah. If you keep rereading the same thing, it's like, because I think where you are personally, and just at that given moment, it's going to be different, a year, 2 years from that. And then you have a different angle, right? And then you reread it, you pick up those different bits and pieces that you missed the first time around. And so it just, one book that I've read, multiple times is, Think and Grow Rich, right? Napoleon Hill. And it's just, I still find nuggets in there that I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's a good one. I missed it. I missed it the last round. Now I got it. And so whenever I get back to it, my next time around, I will, I'll try and see what else is out there. I'm always on the look for what's the new thing, because like I said, it's like being in a different state of mind the moment that you are reading it today versus when you were a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, or you're at a place that you can appreciate something that before maybe was over your head. I guess, from the surgeon analogy, if, the first time you've ever seen a surgery as a resident, you're just trying to get the gross steps, the big things. But then 20 years later, you're focused on these little refinements. And so that's kind of as going down that whole pathway. If somebody had told you something years ago, might not have been ready to hear it the same way.
That
But
great analogy as well. Yeah, that's great. That's right.
so the prayer and the meditation, because this is a great one, and I think people instantly turn off to it. So tell me some of the things of how this helps you with daily life and achieving your goals and getting where you want to go.
Yeah, I think it comes down to visualization and belief, right? That, whatever vision that you have, you desire it, right? And it desires you back. And you want to believe in the steps that you're going to take, no matter what, if it's chaotic in the meantime, that you'll ultimately end up where you're going to be. And that's sort of the how I view things, right? Where I have a vision where I want to be in X year, or have X amount, whatever it is, right? In a goal, and I'll pray on it, and I'll believe. I was raised Catholic. I'm a practicing Christian, and I stick to that, my faith, and apply it so that I understand, so that I know that going forward, that God has got this, and my vision is from me, where God has given me this vision where I can now apply it and follow through, so that I can succeed in what I'm looking for. So I hope that makes sense, but that is the way that I am sort of processing it and how I apply it on my day to day.
Yeah, the visualization is an interesting thing because a lot of the time we sabotage ourselves into I got this goal, this dream, and I have a plan, to implement it, but then we sabotage ourselves and start thinking, well, maybe I can't do that. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's a bridge too far. But when you visualize it actively over and over again, it becomes real and it becomes inevitable. And that was something I struggled. It all seemed like I also grew up Catholic, but grew up in the mountains of Colorado where there was a pretty big hippie crowd. And the visualization seemed like kind of hooey hippie stuff. Like you can't just visualize stuff that could happen. It has over the years, it finally saw this like the more you visualize it, the more it becomes real and achievable, and you end up getting there. And
Yeah,
whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
yeah,
Um,
and I 100%, and I'm testimony to a lot of the things that I didn't even understand, like how things were working out to ultimately end up, coming on top, right, and being successful in whatever challenges I was trying to overcome. It ultimately comes down to the feeling of you being in the moment of your triumph, right, and holding on to it, and so eventually you become that person because you kind of feel it already, subconsciously. That is, it's hard to distinguish, the brain, that is, to distinguish between what's actual conscious and subconscious, and so it kind of operates on a subconscious level where you are just you are that feeling, you are that vision. And so that's sort of the operating mind under what's the other layer, which is your conscious mind. So that's how my understanding of visualization works, right? And so I've been doing it since.
yeah, the inward looking part, the outward, and I just thought of this because I'm still in Utah for what I originally came for the Best Ever conference, which is a big real estate conference, but it's got a lot of active and passive investors. And my motivation when I came here the first time was more the active side, but there's a lot of passive investors who come here. And I was talking to one, and it just made me think like some of the docs I've talked to have never been exposed to real estate. It seems like this crazy thing. And I always laugh the first time I tried to raise any capital. I'm talking to this other doctor about 8% pref and a 15% IRR, which is all pretty standard. And it was too big of numbers. Like she'd never seen her money grow like that. And was like, is this legal? And it was just so different than what all her colleagues and friends were doing. Everybody was pretty much just in a mutual fund or 401k with the choose from the menu. And some of the passive investors I met here were like, no, I like coming here so that they're developing their tribe of people who are doing what they do. And it no longer seems like a crazy, odd thing if the average person you're hanging out with doesn't get it. So it just adds to that vision that it becomes normal and expected that it's going to play out this way.
That's right. Yeah. Surrounding yourself with the right people that align with the vision, it's definitely going to help.
Yeah, like that, what was it, Tony Robbins said, if you hang out with billionaires, you'll become a billionaire. If you hang out with You just start acting like them and doing the things that they do. All right. So we're getting closer to the end here. How do you add value to the world? One of these questions I like, and I love the response you put as well. We send these out ahead of time about doing your best to find out how you can help the person in front of you. I love that individual. Tell me a little bit more about how you kind of apply that every day.
Yeah, I think that the way to approach many things, if not all things, is, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And I don't expect anything to come to me immediately, right? But eventually, the universe has a way of returning the favor, right? And so let me help you out. Let me pay it forward and see what I could do for you today, how I can connect you, how I can do this or that, look at something, whatever you need, right? And in the end, I trust that it'll all come back to me. That is my philosophy, and it's I've kind of operated under that since I can remember, actually.
It's awesome because even when it's not coming back to you, there's some reward to helping people out. And it feels
Oh yeah.
good.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
they get something out of it. And I don't know, versus when you feel like you're fighting over stuff. I guess I've seen that more in the real estate world than a lot of other places that feel like it's a competition. And maybe that's because it takes so much interaction, collaboration, usually to make good things happen. So if you're trying to do it alone, you just don't get anywhere.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it's a lot of collaboration. I think a lot of successful real estate investors are very collaborative in nature. I don't think that they see lack, right? So having competition is more of a lacking mentality. Well, I hope you cut this out.
Yes, a growth versus a scarcity mindset.
Scarcity. There you go. There you go. I was on it. I was dancing around it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a scarcity mentality, right? And so a lot of real estate investors are not are more in the growth mindset, and so that's where you see a lot of collaboration taking place. Absolutely.
That's awesome. All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up the show here. Anything else that you'd like to share before we're done?
Well, I think that's it. I mean, I appreciate the time here, Mike, and I think if anyone wants to investor, new or experienced, wants to learn more about different structures and how to approach investing in real estate or just alternative investments that are, you can apply that to your traditional stock bond portfolio. Feel free to reach out. I'm here as a resource to help you out and provide guidance on that end, and I look forward to it. Yeah.
All right. And we'll have your LinkedIn and your website will be in the show notes. Is that the best way to get a hold of you, or is there other ways to reach out?
Yeah, the best way would be to reach out on LinkedIn or my website. There's a schedule a call button on my website. So that's booked directly to me, and happy to chat with anyone.
Awesome. Well, Paulo, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to everybody who joined us. We hope this has added some value to you. And join us again next time on Surgeon Syndicate. This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.